The storylines that you need to pay attention to in the NFL right now for fantasy football in week 6. We've got a new quarterback in Cincinnati. Targeting the Cowboys defense might be the biggest cheat code in fantasy football right now. A week after figuring out how to attack the Cardinals backfield, now we have to do it all over again with the Chargers and so much more. I've got 5 big questions for week 6 fantasy football, storylines that you need to pay attention to this week and what it means for your fantasy lineups. Question number 1, can Joe Flacco save the Bengals, and will the real Packers defense please stand up? Yeah, so right off the bat here, I'm going to cheat a little and combine 2 questions because the Bengals play the Packers, and there's a lot that we need answered here. As of now, Cincinnati plans for Joe Flacco to start. He is an experienced veteran quarterback. He should be able to step in quickly. Now, will he be a massive upgrade over Jake Browning? Probably not. Technically speaking, Joe Flacco has been worse than Browning in terms of passer rating, completion percentage, expected completion percentage. Flacco is going to a worse offensive line, and Browning has actually been airing the ball out more than Flacco, but there is reason for optimism here for everyone, especially for Chase Brown. It has been tough sledding here for the Bengals offense, but Brown's struggles have been especially painful for fantasy managers, myself included here. He hasn't surpassed 50 yards rushing in a single game, and while he's had decent receiving volume, it hasn't translated into meaningful yardage or fantasy production. He has been catching checkdowns, but they're not productive checkdowns. The question is whether that is a Brown problem or a Browning problem. Brown thrived on receiving volume and touchdowns in 2024, but this year he has just 1 touchdown. Way back in week 1, he is down in every single major statistical category. The switch to Joe Flacco could help him. In week 1, with Cleveland, Flacco targeted his running backs heavily. Dylan Sampson caught all 8 of his targets for 64 yards. And in week 2, Quinshon Judkins, that was the weird game. He made his debut, was on a limited snap count, and all 3 backs were very involved. There were a total of 12 targets to running backs, and Sampson caught a touchdown. That is very encouraging for Brown's outlook. Now, for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I think we will see a better outlook, but that has less to do with Joe Flacco and more to do with the fact that the schedule is about to get very soft defensively, which is why I told you guys to hold on to the receivers because it will pick up. As for the Packers defense, it has been a strange season. They opened the year looking elite, holding David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, of all people, to under 50 rushing yards, while Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams were both also very quiet. Then in week 2, Washington and Jaden Daniels, the Packers defense was again very solid. Week 3, against Cleveland, went about as expected. Everyone does well against Cleveland, but in week 4, Dak Prescott, Javonte Williams, George Pickens all dominated. So was Dallas the outlier here, or was Green Bay's defense just kind of fooling us early on? We're going to find out real quick here. Question number 2, can the Chargers overcome their offensive line woes, and can we actually trust this backfield? What are we going to do with it? The Chargers are in a rough spot here. There's no mystery. We know exactly why. Their offensive line was already on thin ice with the loss of Rashawn Slater. Now they're even in worse shape with left tackle Joe Alt out and more injuries piling up across the line. The true identity of this team was the version that we saw in week 1, which was as healthy as they've been all season. The recent struggles, they are temporary and they should resolve itself over the next couple of weeks when the offensive line does get healthier. Unfortunately for fantasy managers, we don't have that kind of time. Omarion Hampton landing on IR is a massive blow, and since he was drafted sometimes as an RB1 in some leagues, no one expected we would be sitting here debating Hassan Haskins and Kimani Vidal for the Chargers backfield, but here we are. Despite the offensive line issues, Omarion Hampton was still producing thanks to volume, touchdowns, and receiving work. He was doing well. If this becomes a true committee, it might not be that fantasy relevant here. The Chargers have told us that they wanted to use multiple backs. That is exactly what we saw early in the year. In weeks 1 and 2, neither Hampton nor Najee Harris even reached double-digit fantasy points. It was a committee, and it was an ineffective committee, and they were pushing a lot of pass volume. Now, coming off a week where Michael Carter stepped in for Arizona to have an excellent game with Trey Benson down, fantasy managers were hoping for a similar kind of breakout here from one of these running backs. But who can we actually trust here? Technically neither, but that is not the answer that you guys want. In all seriousness, the safer play here is to go with Hassan Haskins. He has the Michigan connection with Jim Harbaugh. Last season, Harbaugh kept giving random goal line touches to Haskins that was driving us crazy. The upcoming schedule does lean towards games where the Chargers should be very competitive. We want the early down goal line guy here. Question number 3, just how bad is the Cowboys defense? The Cowboys defense has been an absolute mess this season, and they are truly the most advantageous matchup for quarterbacks. Dallas has faced a wide range of quarterback styles here. Rushing quarterbacks like Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, inconsistent quarterbacks like Jordan Love and Caleb Williams, and even Russell Wilson, who torched them for 450 yards and 3 touchdowns before being benched the next week. Just to give you an idea how awful this is. They are giving up over 300 passing yards per game, which is crazy when you consider that only one of the quarterbacks they have faced is actually a volume passer. But that number actually undersells just how bad they've been because it includes Jalen Hurts' 152 passing yard performance. Outside of Jalen Hurts, every quarterback that they have faced has thrown at least 280 yards and multiple touchdowns against him. That is absolutely insane. The Cowboys are the friendliest matchup for opposing quarterbacks and wide receivers. They are also the 6th most favorable matchup for opposing running backs, and even tight ends and kickers are having success against them. The only thing that tends to struggle facing Dallas is defenses facing them. This week is the ultimate test for the Cowboys against the Panthers. Bryce Young has clearly regressed, sadly. I love Bryce Young, but I can admit it's pretty bad here since that back half of the season turnaround in 2024 where we really thought he was progressing forward. He has struggled to produce volume, and aside from one random massive game against Arizona, he has failed to reach 200 yards in 4 of his 5 starts. We will likely see Carolina lean on the ground game here, but Bryce Young is going to have to push volume to keep up with the Cowboys offense. And Bryce Young is technically a Hail Mary streaming option if you need it. Regardless, the Panthers are the perfect test for the Cowboys. If Dallas cannot manage to stop Bryce Young, we have a clear path ahead here. Target anything and everything facing the Cowboys. Dak Prescott could be on his way to leading the league in most major quarterback categories, and the rest of the Cowboys skill positions could continue to have massive games and massive upside due to volume rest of season. Question number 4, is this the perfect matchup for Cam Ward to step forward? We finally saw life from the Titans in week 5, albeit it was a weird kind of life there. Tony Pollard did have his best game of the season. Cam Ward had a rough start, but closed the game with an impressive game-winning drive. And most importantly, Calvin Ridley literally doubled his total receiving yards from the previous 4 games combined. Finally, he looked like the wide receiver 1 that we expected. The Titans' win was a bit fluky, right? But nonetheless, the question now is whether Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley can build on that momentum. They'll face a Vegas defense that has been very friendly, not giving up huge yardage totals and not really forcing turnovers, allowing quarterbacks to have very nice, efficient days. Ward's early season schedule has been a bit brutal with matchups against Denver, the LA Rams, Indianapolis, and Houston. Sometimes inconsistency, but overall, tougher defenses to face here. Week 5 against Arizona was his easiest matchup, and he did respond well. So we could see improvement here this week. If he can carry progress into this matchup here, Ridley would benefit the most. He has been literally dreadful before last week, failing to top even 8 fantasy points in a single game. This could be the turning point here, but do we trust him yet? Not quite. But if Ridley does string together 2 strong performances and Cam Ward continues to look improved, we might be able to welcome Calvin Ridley back into our circle of trust. Question number 5, is the shift in fantasy tight end performances legit? I am low-key loving the production from fantasy tight ends this year. The tight end position has usually been a big letdown in fantasy, but this year it has been one of the most exciting groups to watch. Nearly all of our sleepers are breaking out. This has been amazing. We have seen excellent rookie performances and several young players stepping into that critical second look role in their offenses, that sweet spot that we look for to get that locked in tight end 1. Jake Ferguson is dominating the position there in Dallas. We talked about the continued volume he'll see. Darren Waller, of all people, has emerged from retirement from his rap career and is making a legitimate strong case to be the tight end 1 if he can stay healthy. One of my big questions last week was how Miami would look without Tyreek Hill, and I said that we could start streaming Waller. I didn't think it would be that good there. The Dolphins clearly intended to ramp him up slowly, but with Tyreek Hill out, they had no choice but to unleash him. And unleash he did. He delivered us another strong performance here. If Darren Waller stays healthy, his upside in this offense, we know what it is. It's Jonnu Smith. It is massive here. But it's not just him. Dalton Kincaid is finally thriving here and looks like he could even be close to overtaking Khalil Shakir as the first look in this Buffalo offense. Dallas Goedert is even seeing a steady stream of volume. Tyler Warren has been excellent. Tucker Kraft has really been impressive, and they have all outperformed guys like Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, and Brock Bowers, who's been dealing with an injury. Over the past 2 weeks, deeper tight ends have started to emerge. We've had A.J. Barner, who has become Sam Darnold's favorite red zone target. Theo Johnson thriving with Jackson Dart. Mason Taylor's finally getting the usage that we expected for him to be that second option behind Garrett Wilson. Again, Brock Bowers is dealing with an injury. George Kittle will be back soon, but by the end of the season, the top 5 at tight ends could look legitimately completely different than anyone expected. This week, we are paying attention to see if these young tight ends can continue to push forward. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tara Time, so make sure that you are tuned in. Of course, as always, you are subscribed and turn on your notifications so you can get alert when new videos are out or when I go live, because every single week I've got you covered with top waiver wire ads, live shows with live Q&A where you can ask me questions, and so much more.